NeonicVoid Productions presents.
All right. Welcome to Book Watchers, where the plot is made up and the books don't matter. We're watching the movie anyway. I'm your host with the most, Jacob. Oh my god, yes, this is what I look like. And of course, I am. Fuck you. You're the Duff here.
A toe with a little bit of hair on top.
Yeah. Well, next to you, I look pretty.
I'm cute.
Yeah, you're
Luscious
definitely the Duff.
beard. What?
You're definitely
What's
the
that?
Duff.
Oh, I'm the Okay, I'm beating your ass next time I see you. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Hi,
So
I'm
yes.
Devin.
Yep, and yes, this is what we look like. These are the beautiful faces. It's the voices that you've been listening to for years.
Yeah.
Shout out to all the people in Wales. Yes, this is what we look like.
Oh my God, Wales. Wales. Oh, that's
Wasn't
right.
it like
We did have listeners in Wales.
wasn't it like a lot of our listeners are from Wales, right? Like it's either Wales or somewhere in Europe.
Oh, that's rude. You just, ladies and gentlemen, there's a couple violence here. So my boyfriend just flicked me off as he was walking away. That's rude.
Don't worry,
Ah,
don't worry. Before we even started recording, like I flipped him off like several times.
yeah, go fuck yourself. But no, yeah, great, cool. I don't even know what's going. You're not, yeah. Well, actually, as
Yeah, I'm
of
good.
right now, most of our listeners are, of course, in the United States, Mexico, and the UK.
Okay.
Hi to our Mexican fans.
Hola.
5 downloads. Any whoosies. Yeah, hi, welcome to Book Watchers. Yeah, there's video now. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been talking about switching to video
Whoa.
or to like well not switching to video but just like incorporating video with our podcasts for all you watching us on YouTube
Yeah. Yeah,
and
there's video.
also
Woo!
woo and also we're going to eventually include TikTok as well as Twitter
Mhm,
eventually. We're working on
mhm.
it. And we just
Well, I mean,
decided
about time this comes up, TikTok will be made, and same with the Twitter for
uh-huh.
NeonicVoid Productions. I'll be in the description below. Because by the time this comes out, we're only going to be, because with the new episodes, this will be the third episode of season 3. So we're on episode 3 of season 3. The first 2 episodes do not have video; they only have audio. We decided to do this randomly on a Tuesday,
Mm-hmm.
which is funny
We
because we're
will.
recording on Tuesday. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
video being now incorporated with this one. So instead of seeing the audio on YouTube, you'll see the video portion. If you're here, hi, welcome, what's good? Description below will of course have link tree to everything you need to know for the podcast, this podcast, all the other fun stuff, things happening. Yeah.
Yee. And today we are going to be reviewing another book that Devin has read.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I'm sorry, I gotta pull up the name. Ew, Bradley texted me again. Fuck off, Bradley.
Yeah, try him. Anyway.
And we are gonna be reading. It's called Once and Future, right?
Yes, Once and Future. It's
Yeah.
another, well, unlike the other 2 that I've done so far, this one's a graphic novel or comic book. But I love it so much. I'm like, I need 2 episodes. This gonna be 2 parts because there's a lot. There's 5 volumes in this sucker, 160 pages each, which are fairly easy read. Yeah, so this is Once and Future. It's released by Boom Studios, which they make great comic books if you want some like not like Marvel and DC. They don't have a shared universe. They concentrate more on just on stories rather than a universe, a collective universe. This series ran from October 19th, August 19th. August 2019. Oh my God. Right, ran from August 2019 to October 2022. And it has about 30 issues, but they put it together in 5 different volumes. And today I'm going to be talking about volumes 1 and 2. In this episode, I'm also going to go over some stuff connected to Arthurian lore as well as Beowulf, because I do not expect y'all to know anything and everything about King Arthur and his court and the story of Beowulf. I'm not going to expect you all to know all that. So, and if it seems like I'm looking to the sides because the way my camera's like right here, and my computer screen that I'm looking at is like over here and like right in front of where my eyes are currently. So I'm bouncing back and forth. So if it looks weird because I'm not looking at the camera, my camera is placed oddly. While over here, Jacob over here has his camera on his laptop facing the way he's looking. So that ugly mug of his. So the story is created by Kieran Gillen. I'm terrible with names. We know this.
I am too.
Yeah, it's Kieran Gillen. Kieran Gillen is a British comic book writer. He's done stuff for X-Men, Marvel, Star Wars, Darth Vader. He's also he's a co-creator of the Dr. Aphra series from Star Wars. And he's done also some like DC work and shit too. No, Siri, I did not say your name. Thank you. Why is my phone popping off like that?
Be careful when you say that, because my Siri will pop off too. Scares the shit out of me. I'll just be talking, or I'll just say, "Oh man, are you serious?" And she'll just pop up and be like, "I'm always serious, Jacob."
Oh my God, they're haunted, like the last week's book, The Thing Between Us.
Oh God.
They're talking to that thing. But yeah, he's a comic book writer. And the other co-creator is Dan Mora, who is the artist, and his artwork and this is so good. So good. And the colorist is Tamara Bonvillain. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Again, I love y'all, so sorry for the mispronunciation of your name if I am mispronouncing it. But the names to the writers, artists, and stuff will also be in the description below. So I have those notes there so y'all can see and where to find it and everything. Yeah. So we're going into volume 1. Volume 1 is called The King is Undead. Ooh. So we start off with in Cornwall, Great Britain, where we see a guy bringing in he's an archaeologist, and they discovered an artifact from the 5th century. And he has with him a long-haired blonde woman who he thinks is some professor from some university. And they show that they show some blades and a dagger and like a hand axe from the 5th, what they believe is from the 5th century, as well as a hilt of a sword, or what's the term? It's not a hilt, it's a sheath. Is that where you put the sword in? That's a sheath, right? Jacob, right?
The scabbard, sheath, saya. It's
that. It's the thing that you put the sword in, the blade in. And
the sheath or scabbard.
Scabbard. There you go. That's what I was looking for. He shows a scabbard that he found, that him and his crew found, and she's like, "Oh, And he's like, oh, this is are you a doctor of some kind? And she's like, yep, yeah, I sure am. And she calls in her men, her lackeys are with her, and they take the said artifact and they unfortunately shoot the guy. Obviously, they were not sent by no university, unfortunately. So they took the artifact, and then we jump over to our nursing home in Somerset, and we meet an old woman known as Bridget. She's an old grandma, 5 foot nothing, typical grandma type, sitting there listening to the news, and she's rolling her own cigarettes there in the nursing home, knowing damn well she shouldn't, but she does it anyway, like a stubborn grandma. And they're watching the local news, and she's obviously smoking her little cigarette. And one of the nurses comes up, you can't be doing that. And she's like, but I just need to smoke, just one little smoke. And the guy's like, no, you can't be doing that. So he takes the cigarette, and she's just like, and then she just sits there and watches the whatever news broadcasts are watching. Then we jump over to Bristol, and we meet a ginger young man, probably in his, they never actually say his age, I'm assuming from the artwork he looks to be like in his late 20s, early 30s, and he's on a date with a woman, and he spilt wine all over her on their first date to a nice restaurant. And I'm like, damn, I mean, if you're single, because they draw him so good in this, so good in this story. The gayness in me. So his name is Duncan, and he's on a date with a woman named Rose. They obviously, Rose works with the history department of a local university for academia, and he is, do they actually say what he works with? What his job is? I actually never say what he actually does. He's not right here anyway. But yeah, he's on a date, and it's not going so hot, and he gets a call from his grandma, and he picks up the phone, and she's like, oh, let me guess, you're going to, something came up, I just have to go, you're going to escape through the bathroom window. And it's like, is this day going that bad for you? And I'm still here. Basically, she's like, I'm still here. And he's like, no, my grandmother, something, my grand's calling me. And she's like, oh, is everything okay? So he basically talks about how his grandmother is hard as nails, a bad bitch. She doesn't take shit off anybody, and she wants things her way or the highway. So she's very much a handful for an old elderly woman. And when he picks up the phone, Duncan, here's his grandmother, and she's like, yeah, I'm in the woods smoking a cigarette. And she's like, yeah, I ran away. And he's like, why'd you run away? And she's like, it seemed easier than making a fuss about all the bullshit going on. She's like, so I left. And he's like, I have to go get you now. So he has to leave his date because she decided to run away from a nursing home on a little adventure. And apparently she does this a lot. So he has to constantly drop whatever he's doing to go hunt for his grandmother. And he ventures off into the woods to find her. And he does, but as he comes up, she's trying to pull a latch up from the ground. And he's like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm handling something. She's like, I need some old things. And he opens up the hatch. And it's a bunch of weapons. Full armory. Guns. All shapes and sizes, knives, daggers, a whole hip-hop shebang in the ground. And he's like, what the fuck is this? And she's like, nothing's missing. And of course, he doesn't know anything about this. He's raised his whole life not knowing his grandmother has an assortment of weapons in some pit downstairs, down in the ground somewhere, in the middle of the woods. So he is flabbergasted. He's like, what the fuck is this? And he's like, she's setting up for a adventure. She's looking for something in particular. And as they're looking she looks outside and she's like, oh dear, as this green mist starts forming around the area. And he's like, what's this lighting? Why did the lighting change? She's like, well, this isn't good. And he's like, what's going on? And you see a beast, an animal that shows up behind them when they're not looking. Now, this animal has a body of a lion, a head of a snake. Like its neck is like a snake coming out of the body of the lion, and the body of the cat is a combination of a lion and a leopard, and it has like a lizard's tail, and it's pregnant with babies. And this is known as a questing beast. Now, as I said before, I am going to kind of fill everyone in on what some of this stuff is if you're not acquainted with Arthenian lore. So a questing beast is a cross-animal monster that appears in various texts of Arthenian lore. If you see a questing beast, it usually means, okay, there's a quest is coming. It's a sign, it's an omen that, oh, you're about to go on a quest. It pops up at the most random times. It pops up at the most inconvenient times, and it's kind of annoying. So Duncan's freaked the hell out because obviously he's never seen a creature like this, and
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now joined with Devin's
roommate.
Oh, that's Sean. Oh, he got a haircut.
Hi.
I thought that was
John.
John.
No, it's not Johnny. It's Sean. Anyway, so the questing bee starts running, chasing Duncan, and he's like, "Oh, you're looking to see no one came in the room."
Well, no one would ever walk into my room without my permission. No, I thought I heard Shelly like moving around, but no, she made a bed out of all my hoodies that I threw on my bed.
You and your hoodies.
Mm-hmm.
Questing beast. So the questing beast is chasing Duncan, and his grandma's like, "Wow, did it." His grandma's like, "Yeah, keep him busy," as she's getting weapons ready.
I want her to know it was me.
So, the questing beast is chasing Duncan through the woods, and it's tearing down trees, rampaging through the woods as Duncan's like running full sprint. And she's just throwing a grenade launcher aside, a dagger, a gun, and she's like, found it! And she's yelling to her grandson, come back around. And he starts running his way around as the beast catches up to him. And he's just like, I thought the date was the lowest point, not this. I didn't think I was going to be fighting monsters today. So the monster and him start going like head to head to each other as he picks up a literal tree that fell off the ground. Now, mind you, this boy grew up his whole life as a normal person, and he doesn't know that he has these certain powers and shit. So he's literally picking up a whole ass tree, and using it as a weapon to tackle this beast. And he shoves the big, huge log. That's probably a good 5-foot piece of log, and shoves it in the quest beast's mouth, and as he makes a run for it from her. And it, of course, chomps it off. And as he's running back to his grandmother throws up I think it's a javelin. It's a long spear with a flag on the end of it. So I'm assuming that's a javelin. So she's like, here. And lance. It's a lance. So he catches a lance, and he puts out like a battle cry as he tries to throw the lance at the questing beast who's coming after him. And the questing beast stops and runs off. And he starts chasing it, and his grandma's like, don't bother. Don't bother. Let it go. It'll come back again. You don't have to kill this thing right now. It'll come back later. You'll have to kill it later though, but she's like, don't worry about it now. It'll come back. And it does. So the questing beast ventures off, and it's just those two with their arsenal of weapons and shit. And of course, Duncan's having a meltdown. He's like, what is this? This shit is real? the questing beast is real? Because all he knows is that these are all stories that he was told as a kid. He didn't know all this shit was legit. And his grandma was like, yeah, all this is real. But you said all this was nonsense. And she's like, yeah, it's still nonsense, but I didn't say it wasn't real. So he's losing his shit. His world's been shattered. And he's like, I'm not doing this. And she's like, we're going to go on this adventure. And he's like, I'm not doing this. Are you serious? Are you crazy? And he pulls a gun on her. She pulls a gun on him. He's like, no, we are. Get in your car. We're going to drive. And she has him at gunpoint as he picks up her luggage, her stuff that she's taking with her. And he's like, you're not going to shoot me. And she's like, oh, okay. She shoots him. She shoots him in the ear. So his earlobe blows off. And he's like,
this is his grandmother?
This is his grandmother, yes.
Jesus, this sounds like my grandmother.
Bridget is a baddie. So this is an old, bitter British woman. And she, shoots off his earlobe. He's like, you shot me. And she's like, I was trying to miss. Oh, well. And they go back to his car, put the stuff in the trunk, and then they go on a journey to basically hunt for Excalibur. And he's like, Excalibur? What? And he's like, yeah, Excalibur. It's real. So he gets a nice little awakening with that. He's like, Excalibur. You're telling me Excalibur is real. She's like, repeating yourself isn't going to make it any better or solve anything. So take a deep breath. It's fine. Excalibur's real. Cool. Move on. And he talks about how, it's Arthur's sword. And she's like, no, it's not Arthur's sword. It was lended to him it was loaned to Arthur, which in the original story, if you know, Excalibur is technically the owner of Excalibur is the Lady of the Lake. So technically speaking, the Excalibur is not King Arthur's sword. It was just loaned to him for the story purposes. And she talks about how somebody is trying to kickstart a prophecy. And that's what happened in the beginning with the sheath, is that this group or this person's trying to kickstart a prophecy, bring Arthur back from the dead, all that fun shit. And then to reunite the Britons, United Kingdom, England. Not King Arthur, if y'all don't know. I'm assuming most people know who King Arthur is, or the story of him, that he was a king and Arthurian lore, and he waged war against the Anglo-Saxons and all that fun shit. Now you may be asking, wait, huh?
I just want to add, the unfortunate thing about the story with King Arthur is that, while a lot of it is embellished, we're not really sure if this is just historians are not really sure if he was real or if this was just a myth that was created during the Dark Ages. Because the thing is that his story originates during a time period when there was no written records being kept.
Yeah.
So this was after the fall of the Roman Empire, because the fall of the Roman Empire is what kickstarted the Dark Ages. And so any kind of authority that was responsible for chronicling histories, they just stopped.
Yeah.
They ceased to exist. So whether or not Arthur Pendragon was a real figure in Britannia at the time it's still up in the air. There's hints and evidence to his existence, like artwork and, of course, the verbal retelling of his story. But whether or not he is real is still up in the air. I mean, I'm pretty sure he was real, but of course a lot of the his travels and things that he faced were probably embellished a lot.
Yeah, but sadly there's no, as Jacob said, there's no concrete evidence that he literally existed. And so there's a whole gray area of is this considered mythology or is this considered literature? So it's that weird little gray area with the Arthurian lore and stories. King Arthur again was waging war against the Anglo-Saxons, and you may be asking, wait, aren't the Anglo-Saxons the British? Yes, you are correct, dear viewer. The Celts is what King Arthur was fighting with. The Celts versus the Anglo-Saxons. It gets weird, okay? It gets weird. The whole Arthurian lore, when you really look at it, is very convoluted because there's different tellings of the story and shit. So, and this comic illustrates that because some of the stuff you think you know is actually wrong, and how, like, in this world, oh, it's something different. And even, as I soon will find out, even Arthur, when he comes back from the dead, he's very confused and shit, which again kind of illustrates on how Arthurian lore, what we have, is very convoluted. So, like, the Sword and Stone. Some people think Sword and Stone's Excalibur. And some people think it's not. That's two different swords. That the Sword and the Stone is something different compared to Excalibur. Because Excalibur is technically with the Lady of the Lake, but why is it in the stone if it's not Excalibur? And what's the sword of that? It's weird. There's no straight answer. It's a lot of just make your own, piece it together your own way and shit.
Yeah, depending on like what lore you follow, or what sources you prefer, there are legends of like these legendary swords, and two of them, some people believe two of these legendary swords appear in Arthurian legends. So of course Excalibur is one of them. Yeah. And while a lot of people believe, Excalibur was the Sword and Stone, other people believe it was actually another sword called Clarence. Clarence.
Is that the Black Knight?
No, the sword's name is called... No, not the Black Knight. The Sword and the Stone's name was actually like Clarence. Like that's his name. Or Clarence. I don't know how to pronounce the name, but that's a name of one of the swords. And Excalibur, like, he eventually gets Excalibur from the Lady of the Lake, because I think Clarence was actually supposed to be his father's sword that was driven into the stone, and then later on he needed a more powerful, more like magical sword, and that's where Excalibur comes from. Like, there's a bunch of different, like, all across Europe, there's legends about these legendary swords, like, of course, Excalibur. There's one sword called, I think it's called Durandal.
Yeah.
Like Durandal. There's Cortana. There's I'm pretty sure it's a French. There's a French sword, or I don't know how to pronounce it. It starts with a J, like Joyeuse or Joyce.
There's a lot of swords.
There's a lot of different swords, and as far as I know, two of them, it's Clarence and Excalibur appear in Arthurian legends. But then again, like we say, it's so convoluted, you can find so many different sources, and they'll either contradict each other or support each other.
Mm-hmm. And I like how this comic illustrates that, because even Arthur can't get shit straight either, so because he's all jumbled up and shit. So we jump back to Grandmama. She's explaining everything about how Arthur wants to reunite Britain, and she talks about how there's a group that wants to bring him back, and he only comes back at a time at Britain's darkest time. But they don't say. What's funny about that is, and kind of correct, when they say King Arthur will come back when Britain needs him most, at their darkest time. But they never tell you if he's the reason for the darkest time. So the fact that you start seeing, like with this story, how King Arthur's perceived as evil, and there's other stories that do the same thing with that, because they never strictly tell you what causes the dark time that he would need to come back. Is him coming back the reason why the dark times for Britain come? So that's what it kind of plays into with this, is that, sure, yeah, he'll come back when Britain needs him most, but is he the problem? The answer in this story is yes. Yes, he is definitely the fucking problem. Skeletor looking motherfucker. So, While the
Uh-huh.
grandmother's explaining all this, we jump back to the woman in the beginning where she got the that artifact, and she finds the tomb of King Arthur. And as the grandmother says, and I quote, "Well, he could return because it's Britain's darkest hour, sure, or his return could cause it." Again, they don't really tell you. I love that. I was like, oh, that's so cool. So then we jump to the next chapter where she's, basically going on a rant on how all this is real, and her grandson Duncan is just like losing his goddamn mind. He's like, all this is fucking real. Like, what the fuck? What am I supposed to do with this information? He's having a hard time digesting this information, and he's kind of just losing his mind because he's not in control of the situation, and he's like, I don't know what the fuck to do with all this. And she's like, it's gonna be fine. And he's worried about the questing beast, and his grandmother's like, the questing beast is pretty simple, Duncan. You're on a quest. It's fine. It's fine. You have a job to do now. And he's like, what the fuck is that supposed to mean? And they get to their location, and they walk to this castle out in the middle of the open fields and hills of England. And they open up the door to this little tower, and that green dreamlike smoke surrounds the place again, which means something else is coming. And we see, when he opens up the door, there's a staircase that leads downward, and you see a bunch of 4 women around the spiral staircase. And then Duncan's like, who are these people? And his grandma's like, don't be rude. These are the ladies of the lake. They're not going to do anything. They're minding their own business. And she said, we're not looking for them. We're looking for wolves. And goes down the spiral staircase. And at the very bottom, we jump back to the blonde woman. Elaine is her name. And she is at the grave of King Arthur, the tomb. And they open up the grave, and you see the skeleton of what presumably King Arthur wearing his crown. And it's like, at last. And she takes the sheath and she puts it up to the corpse. She's like, the once and future king. And grandma's getting gun and loaded as she's walking down the spiral staircase, and she sees the weird smoke as the skeleton comes to life, all in its green smoke and goo, as the skeleton starts getting up and acknowledging that's King Arthur. Like, it's trying to speak, but of course King Arthur's from a time period that English is not spoken like it is today, because you're dealing with Old English. So the way she puts it is that she's like, give him a minute. He's getting his bearings, and his mind, I guess with magic, his mind's reworking to where when he speaks, it's like the English we have today. Because technically speaking, the English we have today and Old English from the time period that he comes from is basically two different languages. It's more closer to German than it is to English. If you didn't know, ladies and gentlemen and listeners, since English is a Germanic language.
Yeah, it's closely related to like pretty much a lot of northern languages, like German, and I don't want to say like Norwegian, but there's like a dialect, like
Norwegian.
Swedish.
Yeah, Swedish.
Yeah.
Sweden, Norway, Germany, England. I think Gaelic is also thrown in that. But there's all like most of the like the northern European countries outside of course like France and Italy, and then those are the Romantic languages. But like all the Vikings and the Anglo-Saxons, the Celts, all that, most of their languages all come from the Germanic language, the base language that family. So if you didn't know, unlike American English, which is a combination of many different languages, honestly, when you really think about it.
Yeah, American English. Yeah, American English takes a lot from, of course, not just from Old British, but like Old British English, but it also like local dialects
Mhm.
that you can find here in the United States, like Native American language. Like if you're listening from the UK and you ever visit areas that have like large Native American communities,
Yeah.
you'll notice a lot of Native American terms or like cities or towns that are or even like for common phrases that we use, and there
Yeah.
you could trace their origin to like the Native American dialects.
Yeah.
Um, like like especially if you drive through I-10, like the interstate going through like the northern part of Florida, you'll pass through like Tallahassee.
Mhm.
Uh, God, there was one called not Tal. It was oh, there were some crazy ones, but yeah, those languages, and then also French and Spanish.
Yeah.
And then oh, of course, we have like there's a lot of different settlers from Europe and all over the world. So sometimes like depending on what part of the United States you're in, there'll be a lot of like uh different words that we use that come from.
German, Spanish, depending on if
Yeah,
you're in the South. Yeah, German, French, Spanish. We use a lot of terms for different languages over here. So it's English at its core, but there's a lot of other stuff that are kind of thrown in depending on what part of the country you're in.
like
So
here in San Antonio, which is where Devin and I are based in,
mhm,
we there's a lot of like a mixture of Spanish and German.
yeah,
So you'll if you ever take a visit here, highly recommend. Uh, you'll see a lot of that, like Tex-Mex. We have a really large Tex-Mex culture here.
yes, most definitely. I love it. Tex-Mex food is so good. Anyway, I can talk about food, but I'm not going to. So, King Arthur, Skeletor looking ass. He comes up alive, and his organs start coming back as his muscles start forming. So, like, he's standing there, you can see his rib cage, but you can also see his organs start reforming. So, you see his intestines, his stomach, all showing from, like, the rib cage and shit. It looks fucking lit. Teeth starts, like, forming as his jaw starts, like, reforming with the flesh with green crackling magic as he pulls out a sword and he goes up to one of the men as Duncan and his grandma are watching this, and they're like, and Duncan's like, the sword. He's like, what did he just pull out the sword and the stone? And he's like, a sword in some stories, a buried sword. And she's like, it's convoluted, don't worry about it. So the men that are with Elaine bow before her. I think that's how you pronounce Elaine. Elaine. Elaine.
Yeah, Elaine.
Yeah, okay, cool. I was right. And that's a reference to Arthurian lore as well, for those of you who don't know, but that'll be explained later. Um, Arthur gets his sword, takes up one of the hands of one of the men, and cuts their hand and drinks their blood. And he looks at them, and the guy's like, "What the fuck?" And the guy's drinking. Arthur's like, and he lets out a hiss and looks at the man. And he's like, Anglo-Saxon. He doesn't like Anglo-Saxons. So he kills the guy. He literally takes him by the head, lifts him up, and chops him in half. Blood guts everywhere. It's great. It's great. And Duncan's like,
blood, and then
blah, blah, blah. But Arthur's like standing all heroic and king-like, and he's just like, and everyone's like freaking out and screaming. The ones who are technically, she brought a bunch of Anglo-Saxon descendants there, a bunch of British descendants, and I don't know why she did that, because if she would have known, she probably should have brought, like, I don't know, some Irish or some Welsh descendants, not necessarily British, because Arthur hates Britain, the Britons, yeah, for whatever reason, even though he's the king of Britain. Again, don't think too hard about it. It's a lot. He's Celtic. I've been fine. I would have been fine. Jacob would not have been fine.
Yeah, I am both British. Like, well, my family can trace their roots back to Britain, Spain, Mexico.
Anglo-Saxon and Spaniard, yeah, he would have been gone. you've been gone. Done so. I've been fine. So, yeah, he's out killing everybody, and Elaine's just like there, like, well, shit. And she lifts up her hand to drink the. As he checks her blood, and he's like, he drinks it, and he's like, "You come to pay homage to the true king of Britain, Celt." Obviously, she's Celtic descent, and she knew that. She's like, I'm fine. And obviously, because her hair is blonde, but she's also kind of, I don't know how to describe it. Blonde, but she's also kind of ginger. There's like a strawberry blonde thing going on with the color choice they chose. It's like a very light orange that you can kind of see as blonde, but there's some red in there. So obviously, Celtic. And of course, King Arthur stops. He's like, where are my knights? And she's like, yeah, they're dead. and it's just her. And he's like, well, a kingdom must start from somewhere. So he's like, raise my knights. And he makes the corpses that the people he killed, the men, he turns them into his knights. So he uses the dead corpses, attaches armor to them, and remakes his circle. As this woman is, obviously she goes by Elaine, and they're caught. The grandma and Duncan are caught, and they're like, oh shit. And they make a run for it as Arthur, well, actually they try to sneak out. Duncan trips and catches the attention of the new knights, as they start going after them. And then they go on a wild goose chase as Granny and Duncan unleash bullets and lead upon the knights and Arthur. Now, Jacob, do you think bullets would work on an undead king?
In popular media, both books, graphic novels, and movies, bullets don't work for shit. According to like the logic from these kind of media, because especially when it comes to magic or some other supernatural being or aliens or what have you, if it is supernatural in nature, bullets don't work.
And you are correct in that assumption.
Mm-hmm.
The bullets fly right through him, and he's just like, okay. And they start running for it as the knights continue chasing him. And Graham pulls out from her shirt a grenade, a bomb. And she's like, eat this! And explodes everything.
Yeah.
And they make their way out of said castle that they were once in. And they kind of... So, the colorful smoke that changes as they continue on. Or when they get into an area where the monster appears, or when King Arthur comes back, that green rainbow kind of discolored smoke or fog that comes in means they're technically setting foot in Otherworld. Now you may be asking, oh my god, what is Otherworld? Otherworld, depending on the lore, could mean a couple different things. If you're talking about Otherworlds, and as far as the Arthurian lore, Avalon is considered Otherworld. If you're talking about the Celtic mythology, Otherworld is something else. Same with the Welsh. It just means they come from a world that's not a world of fairies and magic, basically. So when that little smoke comes in, rolls in, that's when you know something is going to happen as far as something from the other world that's going to show up and pay an unwanted visit to you if you're there. Cut that part out, Devin. So, we jump back to after the bomb goes off and they make their escape. King Arthur and his knights with Elaine decide to take a trip over to Otherworld from the real world. So Elaine talks about how she talks about a knight that she has, someone that would be very beneficial to Arthur, and she's like, oh, and Arthur's like, oh, well, take us to your boy, show us your boy, and they go through a portal and they go figure all that shit out, and that's where we lead back to Granny and Duncan as Grandma is smoking a cigarette again, like you do, because she's a baddie. And she's like, we need more information. So they try to discuss a plan to find how to get more information on all of this that's happening because they want to be in the know. Try to guess what they're going to do next. Where Arthur's going to go. King Arthur's going to go with this woman. And Gran talks to Duncan and says, hey, doesn't the woman you went on a date with, does she work at a university for history or some shit? And Duncan's like, yeah, she does. So he's like, okay, cool, let's pay her a visit. So they go up to her house. Knock, knock, knock. She opens the door. She's like, hey, Rose, I'm so sorry. Points the gun at her. You're coming with us. And Duncan's like, are you fucking mad? And she's like, what? It worked with you. I mean, I gotta get her to come with us somehow, right? She doesn't think things through. She's old. So Rose goes with them, of course, because at gunpoint. And they go to the archives of the university she works at. And they're trying to look for they're looking for a doctor's. There's a certain box that a doctor or professor left there. And then she's looking for that. Now, I guess the doctor or the professor either left, died, doesn't matter. I'm not going to look. I'm not going to go looking and try to find it. Doesn't matter. He's not there anymore. So she's like, yeah, we should have the archives of that somewhere. So she finds a box that has a lock on it. She knows the combination. She opens it. And she finds a letter, a set of keys, and one that says, I'm sorry. And it's signed Charles West. And this man has a connection to Gran, of course. And it talks about how, like, if you're reading this now, it's worst case scenario. It's code red. Shit's hitting the fan. Basically,
Wee woo.
shit's hitting the fan. Wee woo. If you're reading this and I'm not around, wee woo. Code black. So,
must be that bad.
Oh yeah, and and of course Gran's like, well, shit. Now we gotta go find Arthur and interrupt him and his knights as they try to find, Galahad. When they try to find Galahad, who's supposedly the perfect knight. Now, Galahad, little history on that, because they kind of do go over that in the story, but I might as well just do it now. So Galahad. Galahad is a knight of the Round Table. He's one of the 3 archivers of the Holy Grail in the Arthurian lore. He is the bastard child of Lancelot and Elaine of Astrolot. And that's how you say it? Because obviously Lancelot was married to somebody else, but he had a thing with this Elaine and had a bastard child. And that's who Galahad is. Now, he's the illegitimate child of Lancelot. And he is renowned for his purity as the most perfect of all knights. And he comes up in the Arthurian lore quite late in the total lore, so he comes in towards the end of it. So he's probably one of the youngest knights, if not the youngest of the knights. So that's basically what she's worried about. She's like, we gotta stop him from finding his Galahad, because then that's the start of the end. So they go to this church. As they walk in, and of course, Gran's like, okay, cool, Rose, light a candle. And she's like, okay, cool, lights a candle. Walks in this church, sees a bunch of spirits and ghosts floating around. And of course, Rose is like, oh, this is fucking real. What? The look on her face is just like, behooved. I don't know about you. I'd be like, oh my god, this shit is so cool. Oh my god. I'd be living. But that's me personally. I'm kind of a nut job. So.
Mm-hmm. You're always down for the tea.
I'm always down for the tea. Yeah. King Arthur. Tea.
Tea.
So.
Tea, chaos, destruction.
If Of course. Of course. I mean, come on. That's why I implement this shit into my D&D game of Voidonica, which, if it's not up by now, it will be fairly soon. It's a lot of work doing that, by the way.
Yeah. Cut this part out. But if everything wasn't so volatile, I would invite you to my grandmother's funeral, because I'm pretty sure there would be like something's gonna happen. I don't know. I just have a feeling that some shit's gonna hit the fan.
See, I'd be in the back just going. After I quench the burns of bursting in the flames and walking into a church. So, what's happening? Ooh.
It's not just any kind of church; it's a Catholic church too.
Oh yeah, I instantly just burst into flames. But after I put out the fire. Oh no, I'll sit in the back. Incognito, just like, So Rose. Gran tells Rose, keep the candle lit, stay outside the door, deter from anyone coming in here, and for whatever you do, make sure the candle stays lit. Because if the candle doesn't stay lit and goes out, we're fucked. We're trapped there. That's our gateway back, is the candle. So she has like an old-fashioned candle, and she's keeping it lit as they go deeper into this chapel. As they come up to a door, when they open it, and you see a sword in the stone in this other world. And Duncan's like, Excalibur? And she's like, oh, Duncan. In some stories, yes. In most, no. Excalibur belongs to the Lady of the Lake, remember? This is maybe Clarent, as Jacob was saying. She's like, I'm not even sure. It could be Clarent. That's possibly too late, 14th, 15th century. This Arthur seems mainly early Welsh, maybe. Like I said, as this story is illustrating, shit's weird and convoluted. And she's like, let's stick with the sword and the stone. Just the sword and the stone, right? It's not Excalibur, most likely. She's like, it's not. Just call it the sword and the stone. Don't confuse you or me. And Arthur pulls out the sword and the stone, and he gets his badass cloak and armor. And you know what? I'll just show the camera because it's kind of cool and how it is. That's the armor he gets, like the cloak and shit, when he pulls out the sword and the stone. Damn. And I'm like, this shit's lit. And he's like, speak to me, Britain. It hungers for the throat of the Saxon men. And I'm like, he's bloodthirsty. And then the woman, Elaine, walks up and she's like, my king, my son, Galahad. And it's a blonde, prissy boy. Again, I will show. Oh, shit. I will show a picture. Blonde, prissy boy. Thinks he's top shit. I'm the most beautiful creature imaginable. I am the perfect knight. Bow before me. Galahad. And his Gran's over here like, oh, Elaine, how much did that cost you? And this is her child, by the way. And she's also thinking, says, okay, Galahad is the son of Lancelot. He's the greatest knight, chosen one's silliness. And she's like, who's the father? Because obviously these people, Lancelot and the original Elaine, are not around in today's times. So somebody had to fill the slot of Lancelot. But she's like, who? And I'm getting kind of ahead of myself, but she's kind of like, who'd she get to be Lancelot? Obviously, if she got Lancelot, she had to bear said child with a merry man who's on the same level as Lancelot in whatever terms that seem deemable. But Galahad goes up to Arthur, and he's like, I was bred for this purpose, my king. Let us start this age of adventure. And Duncan and Gran are watching all this, and he's like, okay, what's this? What's the whole purpose of this? And he's like, Galahad finds the Grail. The Grail heals the land, and she's like, if they find the Holy Grail, none of us will survive that purge. Because the Grail will purge the land, heal it, and bring it back to what it once was, killing everybody in the process. And I'm like, wow, that doesn't seem that much like a holy grail. So, and Duncan's like, how are we supposed to stop this? And of course, she's like, of course, when he's saying that, his grandma just put a sniper rifle over his shoulder, and she's like, don't move. And she's aiming for a headshot for Galahad. And she goes in, or she tries to go in for the shot. We jump back up to the beginning, to the front of the building, as you see Rose and 2 security guards coming up to her and be like, so what are you doing? And she's like, oh, you know, this and that. I'm part of the history exhibit shit. You know, don't worry about it. She sends them away. She talks to them like this is, she's there for a purpose. Don't worry about it. And they walk away. And we jump back to King Arthur as he knights Galahad, and Gran's still trying to line up her shot to shoot him in the brain. Because if you get rid of Galahad, it won't stop them completely, but it'll cause them to it'll set them back a bit on obviously on King Arthur's plan. So, but his mother gets in the way, and she's like, God, I wish he just fucking moved. And they're trying to align the shot as he's getting knighted by King Arthur. And Duncan just busts open the door like he owns the place. And of course, King Arthur's like, destroy them. And all the knights go after them as they start running their way out of the building. And eventually they do get out and they see the police there. And they point the guns at them. And they're like, hands up. And they put their hands up. And as they run out the door, the green smoke starts coming in. So you see one of the knights come out of the door, front door. And the cop turns around, gets his head chopped off. Gone. And another one gets stabbed into the chest, bleeding out. There's blood and guts everywhere. And Rose blows out the candle, and it kind of just ends it. And there's just 2 dead bodies on the floor. They should have just walked away like Rose told her, but they didn't listen. So they're driving away, of course. And they're like, okay, what's our next move now? And Rose's like, am I like your secretary now? She's like, no, you're more useful than that. You have access to shit we need. It's fine. So they're trying to figure out their next course of plan as they get to this house. And they're like, okay, there's someone here that we need. And they're like, who is it? We need to find the Fisher King. And they're like, the Fisher King? What the fuck does the Fisher King have to do with any of this? And they're like, Grant's like, well, the Fisher King, if y'all didn't know, the Fisher King, it is the person that guards the entrance to the castle that holds the Holy Grail. If you kill the Fisher King, or if you're worthy enough, the Fisher King will show you the entrance to said castle to get said Holy Grail. So that is the next obstacle that they're going to have to deal with, is finding the Fisher King. And this Fisher King is Gran's husband, or ex-husband, T. You start figuring out, oh shit, Duncan, your grandfather is the Fisher King. What? That's suspicious. That's weird, right? Side-eye? Bombastic side-eye.
Criminal offensive?
Oh, yeah. So, of course, the Fisher King, Grandpa, knows what's going on, and he has a gun out, and he's like, I'm not stupid. We're not doing this. And he Gran shoots her ex-husband through the wall, obviously, because he's hiding on the wall, and she's like, duh. And he's like, these walls are thin. I could just kill you. It's fine. And then, of course, Galahad and one of the other knights comes busting through the front door as they find their way to the Fisher King, and the Fisher King lets them into the entrance to find the Holy Grail. And, of course, he dies. So Galahad is in that castle now, and they're like, oh shit, we need to figure out something. And Gran's trying to think of a plan, and Gran looks to Duncan and be like, cool, do you see me as a mother figure? Right? Because his grandmother raised him from a very young child, because his mother and father abandoned him, died, doesn't matter. She raised him. She's like, cool, you see me as a mother figure, right? And he's like, of course I do. Do you see me as a father figure? I need you to say that. Do you see me as a father figure? And he's like, yes, I see you as you are both. And then she shoots herself. She became a surrogate Fisher King because the previous Fisher King, when they tried talking to him to let him in, he shot himself. He blew his brains out because his ex-wife, he didn't want to deal with his ex-wife. So Bridget was like, cool, I gotta figure this shit out. So she made herself into a surrogate Fisher King as a placeholder to open said gates. Doorway. So she opens the doorway by doing that. And Duncan goes in to take care of Galahad. So when he gets to Galahad, he sees him presented by a bunch of ghosts. And there's a woman in the back, a ghostly woman holding the Holy Grail. And the Holy Grail is like a big old bowl with this blood kind of pouring out of it. And she's like, And he's like, cool, now possession carry on. Let me get a closer look. So Galahad kind of warms on up there as Duncan tries to follow him in with a gun as he gets cornered by the knight. And he gets real close to the lady that holds the Holy Grail. He's also looking for the Holy Grail because he's like, cool, Granite shot herself. If I get the Holy Grail can heal her and she'll live and not, because he's like, you're not dying because she shot herself to let him in. He's like, fuck this. I'm getting the Holy Grail and you're not going to die on fucking me because you got a lot of fucking explain to do, bitch. So he goes through all of this to get said Holy Grail. And the lady holding the Holy Grail asks one of the knights, with whom do you stand? And the knight said, I march with Galahad and of course the woman, well, she kills the knight because that's not what you're supposed to say. And he's like, no. Of course, Galahad's like, don't say that. You're not supposed to say that. So Galahad was supposed to be accompanied by Percival and on the quest. Percival was supposed to be on the quest for the Grail quest, not Galahad. Galahad was with Boros and Percival. Those are two different knights. So it's supposed to be a company of them going to do this. Since it's just Galahad, it was supposed to be Percival. You all following? Again, it's convoluted. You on the page, Jacob? You on the same wavelength? Are you kind of zoned out?
No, I'm here. No, I'm on the same one.
What did I say last?
I hate it here.
That's right. That's what I thought. So you can't zone out anymore. I got you on video, bitch.
Yeah.
So
Don't leave that in here. We don't want.
You look zoned out anyway. I was like, I wonder if he's even listening. So we got Duncan with Galahad, who's trying to get the Holy Grail, but you also need Percival and Boros, who's another knight there. And Duncan's like, I'm going to shoot you. And Galahad's like, isn't that, that's not very knightly. He's like, oh, no, you're right. He puts on the gun like, let's fight. Fisticuffs. That's very knightly, right? And Galahad puts out the sword. He puts it to his throat, Duncan's throat. And he's like, a perfect knight now isn't a perfect knight. Then what does a knight do? And he's not perfect. It's a whole fucking bullshit conversation. As they duke it out, because Duncan socks him in the face and he falls to the ground like a little pussy. And he then goes over to the Grail and takes the Holy Grail, mind you. He's just like, it's mine. And he runs out with it as this liquid is pouring everywhere. And he runs out of said door, and he realizes when he walks out, the Holy Grail vanishes into green smoke. And Gran's like, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. And he's like, what the fuck do you mean? How am I supposed to heal you? And she's like, no, you need to take the Holy Grail out of Otherworld. Because when it vanishes, it takes time for it to go back. So it delays them. So she tricked him. Gran tricked Duncan to go in there to disrupt King Arthur and his trying to get the Holy Grail and shit. And
so it won't reappear in Otherworld for a while then.
Yeah, it won't pop up for a while. And Duncan's like, nah, you're not dying. He's like, Rose, can you drive us back to the previous building we're at, the bath, or what they call it. And he walks into the bath, like a big old room, like an old-fashioned bathhouse. And you see a big pool of water there. And he puts Gran aside and he walks over to the edge of the water. And she's like, what are you doing? And he's like, Duncan's like, I'm Percival, right? I'm a knight on a quest. I need to retrieve a sword of healing for my liege, right? So he's like, I'm playing into that. So he walks over to the lake and he says that, and the lady of the lake, or ladies of the lake, come up and they hand him Excalibur. So he currently has Excalibur in his hand now. As these Skeletor-looking lady of the lake hands come up and holding the blade and they're like, we'll loan you Excalibur. And then we get him walking out with his grandmother. He's like, cool, I'm going to take Excalibur. I'm going to go into Otherworld, and I'm going to force somebody to heal them for me. Heal Gran for me. Or I'm going to stab him with fucking Excalibur. That's his game plan. Because that's going to work, right? Not really. So he walks back into Otherworld. He walks straight up to King Arthur and Elaine and Galahad as they're talking about how she's like, my son's the perfect knight. And he's like, oh, yeah, somehow he did not get the Holy Grail. Oh, so what's happening there? And of course, Duncan comes in and interrupts them. And by this point, he figures out that Elaine is really his mother. So that would mean that Galahad and Duncan are brothers, half brothers, because I don't think they have the same father, or they never really say they have the same father, but I'm assuming they do not because of how his mother, whose real name is Mary, but took on the Arthurian role of Elaine. So she had to find Lancelot. So I'm assuming they're two different fathers, but same mother. So they're brothers. And she's kind of shook by this because she's like, oh shit. She wasn't expecting him to figure it out. That his mother, Elaine, or Mary, is Gran's daughter, who she got into all this mess in the first place. It's a whole family business thing. And from there, of course, Duncan's holding Excalibur as these horde of zombies come up, and he starts swinging the sword, and all the zombies start flying into pieces and ripping to shreds, because Excalibur is nothing to fuck with. It's not. It's a legendary sword for a reason. A magical legendary sword for a purpose that the lady's like, here you go, fuck him up. So he does, and Arthur is like, yeah, give me the sword and I'll give you the belt the healing belt that he has. Give me the sword and I will give you the belt to heal your grandmother. And he's like, it's not mine to give. So Arthur is not happy with that. They start doing the trade because obviously he thinks he can just get the sword. So from there, Gran steps in between those two, and he starts spilling the tea on Galahad. And I quote, he is the greatest knight, and his father was the greatest knight before him. And you see, and a great knight too, I bet, Lancelot. And Arthur's like, I have not heard of this warrior. Granted, he does not know a lot of things, because again, his mind is scrambled. And of course, Lancelot and some lore, depending on the lore, he's either French or Frenchman, or he's Celtic, which is kind of funny because when you really think about it, there's a branch of the Celtic group that's also in France. I think it's the province of Brittany in France that the Celtic lineage resides, because the Celts are obviously in the British Isles, but also a little part of France. So Lancelot is supposedly either French or Celtic, or I guess in some ways both. And she's like, yeah, that Frenchie who shagged with your wife. And Arthur's like, Frank laid with my queen.
Oh Lord.
And you don't know, a Frank is the old term for French. It's what the French were called before France. So, and Arthur's like, oh, you brought a Frank up in here? You laid with a Frenchman? And of course, he's not very happy about it. He's kind of pissed. And Galahad's like, I'm the perfect knight. I belong to the court of Arthur. Like a little bitch. And so they kind of throw aside his mom, Elaine, or Mary. They're like, cool, let's kill her. Galahad's fine. So Duncan gets in the way of that, and Arthur and Duncan duke it out as they make their escape plan to leave. Arthur sends his army of undead horses and shit as they make their way out. They get to said exit, and Gran's like, Elaine, Mary, come with me, we'll save you, and she does not. She stays back. And we end the first volume of the final door closing, Duncan throwing the Excalibur back into the water to the ladies of the lake, returning the weapon that does not belong to him, and they figure out their next plan to stop King Arthur. As they're doing that, the questing beast comes back at the very end, at the most inappropriate time that is not needed. So eventually they duke it out. Duncan does kill him like he's supposed to, according to the story. And that's where volume 1 ends, with the death of the questing beast, which means the quest is in full throttle now. And then we jump to Elaine going through Otherworld, and she finds a certain somebody of magical nature. Can you guess who, Jacob?
Merlin?
She finds Merlin. And she's like, oh my god. She goes to find Merlin, and Merlin's like, you're not Elaine. She's like, you're Nemu, which is the Arthurian lore. That is the real name of the Lady of the Lake, the one Lady of the Lake, which is kind of weird because in this story there's multiple Ladies of the Lake, which kind of goes to show you that there are multiple iterations of said stories, which are represented by the Lady of the Lake, or in this case, Ladies of the Lake. And that is the end of volume 1 of said story. Do we have time to do one? Do we have time to do the other, or do you want to call it? Because I can do 2 through 5 next week, and we can just start a little earlier if need be. I know it's almost 6.
Don't you have Spook?
I do, at 8.
Oh, it's not until 8?
Yeah. Because we can start a little earlier next week. We can start at 1 or 2 next week, and just I can go through 2 through 5. Or I can turn it into 3 parts, doesn't matter. I didn't want to go to the second volume if you wanted to call it quits, since it's almost 6.
I mean, if you could do volume 2 real quick,
okay.
We can do it today.
Cool. Onwards to volume 2, which is titled Old English.
Old English. Ooh.
Yup. So now we jump over to King Arthur with Galahad and Otherworld. And Camelot. Camelot? Yes. Say it again.
Camelot?
Camelot. That's how you say it. Camelot. I'm dyslexic, okay? It looks one way to say it, but it doesn't sound right. It's Camelot. Got it.
I heard you say it earlier, and I was like, huh, I never heard of that before.
Wrong? Yeah, I was saying it wrong. But I mean,
yeah, I was like, Avalon, I didn't even.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just like, wait, what?
Dyslexic. Old English
It
is
sounded
weird.
familiar. Like, I'm over here
Camelot.
like, huh, I don't know much about Arthurian lore, but I just slipped my mind, and then you said it again, I'm like, wait, you mean Camelot?
Camelot. Yeah, Camelot. So they're in Camelot, and Camelot looks like a straight out of a Ben Stoker novel. It looks ooky spooky and not yet cheery and happy-go-lucky as you think King Arthur's supposed to be. Yeah, no. So King Arthur, being undead, Skeletor-looking bitch, and his army of undead bitches, has Galahad there, and he's like, "Cool. Oh my God, you should totally do this for me." He's like, "Would you risk it all to sit on the the Siege Perilous?" And he's like, "Yeah, the Siege Perilous, yes. Only the greatest knight can sit upon it and live." Now, the Siege Perilous, to those of you who don't know in Arthurian lore, of course, is a throne that is only to be sat on by the person to find the Holy Grail. Now, this throne is a throne of spikes and skeletons that are impaled that form this weird throne, Siege Perilous. And Galahad's like, "Yeah, I can totally sit on this. I got this. I'm going to be the one to find the Holy Grail." Because he thinks he's top shit. So he sits in the chair and he's like, "There. See, it's clear and bright. My future's clear and bright, and I got this." As the Siege Perilous starts eating at his flesh. His flesh starts becoming like his armor and his flesh start becoming acidic and melts into his body as his muscle and skin start melting, and he's screaming in agony as his body is changing into a monster. And Arthur's like, "No, you are my greatest knight. If you live. If you live." So his flesh, as his flesh is melting off, we jump back to Duncan. As he's not just finished killing a pixie. Because randomly he decided to he's on a mission, I guess. I guess that mission dealt with killing a pixie. I don't know. And he tells his grandmother about it. He's like, "I'm never going to look at a toadstool the same way again." And I'm like, what does that mean? I kind of want to know what that means now. So he's updating on his grandmother, and he talks to Rose. And of course, Rose is telling him about his next mission on what he needs to do next. Because she's all up in this mess too now. So again, they're going around solving all these problems and shit, trying to stop King Arthur from progressing in his mission or whatnot to bring back England. He talks about how Otherworld's a lot bigger than initially thought. There's more to it and how the influence of it is spreading.
Mm-hmm.
Then they jump to, she tells him, "Oh yeah, you need to go to London. You need to go to the British Museum. There's something going on there." And he's like, "Okay, I will go there." So he goes to the British Museum in London as he's holding a little crystal that kind of guides him throughout the museum to the opening that was made to Otherworld. When he gets there, he sees a manuscript and like a what they call it, a helmet and a shield. And he's like, "Oh wow, this is kind of interesting. Why am I here?" As the smoke starts coming in again, and you see Galahad on his horse. Galahad is a zombified burn victim. Armor's melted into his flesh. He has spikes coming out of his face. Like he looks straight out of hell. And he's like, "What happened?" Duncan's like, "What happened to you?" And he's like, "I'm the perfect knight. I'm perfect!" As he races up, his swords are slashing around, trying to kill Duncan, as of course Duncan's pow pow pow. Like that's going to do anything. As that's happening, somewhere else in the British Library, someone breaks into the library and steals a manuscript. An old manuscript. So obviously this is a diversion that's happening in the museum. So Duncan and Galahad are duking it out as Granny comes in and has a gun. She shoots him, doesn't work obviously, but Galahad gets pissed and he starts running towards Gran as there's a string that is stretched across a hallway. And of course, he's galloping, he's running, and he gets cut in half. And there's a metal wire. And he disappears, but obviously he's like, yeah, I'm not dead. He's not technically dead. He just goes back to Otherworld. So they take care of him, and they go. Rose tells them, yeah, something was stolen from the British Library, a manuscript. And did they say the manuscript? What the manuscript was? This is. Well, the British Library had mysterious break-in. They stole a manuscript. I'm just described now as getting a trace. Yeah, she doesn't say exactly what the manuscript was yet. Then we jump back to Elaine. Or Nemu now. She is reading from this manuscript in this old English or Norwegian words as this on top of this hill, and this fire starts burning as this man starts coming out of the mound, and it is Beowulf.
Oh.
Yeah, Beowulf and his glory.
Good lord.
Yep, so the manuscript that they stole, that Elaine, Mary, Nemu stole, was Beowulf. And Beowulf's like, all the foes of Beowulf will be blade kissed by dawn. Of course, that's Beowulf for you. So now they have Beowulf was summoned for some unknown reason. Some weird reason. Gran and Duncan go to that mound, and they're kind of looking around like, this is weird. What's going on here? And they're finding evidence that something was brought back from somewhere, but they're not quite sure what. As they're kind of, Gran's looking at the ritual, and she's like, She's like, well, the manuscript was Beowulf. And he's like, what about Beowulf? She's like, don't be draft, Duncan. Beowulf is just a poem. She's like, Beowulf is not real. Of course, she's like, yeah, Beowulf's not real. Of course not. Why would it be real? Then we jump back to Otherworld, and Galahad's legs are missing, and he's screaming bloody murder. His blood and guts are pouring everywhere. And Arthur's like, even your howls are mighty. Arthur is impressed. King Arthur's impressed. King Arthur is just poking fun at him at this point. And he's like, greatest knight, greatest lungs. As Galahad will eventually rebuild himself, he's going to be screaming in agony until that happens. And he's like, am I going to die? And King Arthur's like, I won't let you. And you're fine. You're fine. Walk it off. Well,
yeah, he'll be fine.
He would walk it off if he had legs. So then they're interrupted by Beowulf coming into the room. And he's like, Beowulf comes to your hall. And Arthur's like, I am Arthur. I am the one who whips the Saxon dogs. He's like, no Saxon am I. Of course, as you know, Beowulf is not Saxon, Anglo-Saxon. He is a tale from, is it Norway?
What?
He's a Viking. Yeah, he's a Viking tale, right?
Yeah, it's northern Germanic. So kind of like in that the greater Scandinavian.
Yeah, Germanic. Okay, yeah, he's from the Germanic legends.
Yeah, it's funny because like there's a certain part of Germanic lore where it overlaps with Scandinavian. So like a lot of stuff from Norway, from the Norwegian area, Sweden, basically where like the Scandinavian folklore begins. You know, like with the Vikings, the Aesir, Vanir, the Norse legends, they begin to overlap with the Germanic legends, and in some cases Celtic as well.
Yes. So Beowulf and Arthur duke it out, and Merlin breaks them up and saying, hey, we're all on the same side here. And Arthur's like, I never heard of you, Beowulf. Are you a mighty hero? And Beowulf's like, yeah, I kill monsters. I mean, that's the layman's terms of it all, but basically. And when you really think about it, it's kind of funny to choose Beowulf, because Beowulf and King Arthur are very similar. They're very similar in ways.
Yeah, they are.
Similar
Very much
story. They had to fight monsters. They fight a battle. They have a whole heroic story. They have a magical sword that's either gifted to them or loaned to them. Not the same, but there's like similarities. And of course, Merlin comes into the picture again. He's like, my king. And he's like, Beowulf will work with you or whatever. And he's like, thank you, Beowulf. Blah, 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 blah. Merlin has his own plan going on while during all this, because he realizes that King Arthur's confused. His mind's all jumbled up, and Merlin's like, because King Arthur's like, who are you? And he's like, I'm Merlin. I'm the person you can trust. I am your advisor. And Arthur's like, yes, Merlin. Of course, Merlin has his own plans going on in the background. He has his own reasons for doing things. Of course, he was the one that got Elaine, or now Nimu, and he brought back Beowulf that way. So he has a whole plan going on behind the scenes without Arthur knowing. Then we jump back to Duncan and Gran as they finish up their investigation with figuring out what's going on there with the mound that his mother summoned Beowulf from, and his mother's watching them from a tree as she is asking questions, and she's throwing out these sticks to try to get answers, some magical shit. So she's like, okay, he's like, she's like, they leave, and she throws the sticks, and the sticks form, good, await my command. And she's like, what about Galahad? And whoever's talking to her is like, he as well. And I'm assuming, you can assume that she's talking to Merlin.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, they drive back, they communicate, they talk to Rose as she's doing her scrying shit, trying to figure out the next move. And then they find, when she's scrying, one of the little needles that she's using to scry with lands on the road that Duncan and Gran are on currently.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, guys, something's happening right where you're at. And they're like, what? And they look out, and Beowulf is falling from the sky. It lands on their car and rips off the roof of the car as Beowulf is trying to kill them, because Beowulf thinks that Gran and Duncan are, can you guess who he thinks they are? Can you guess? Take a guess. Do you know the story of Beowulf?
I mean, off the top of my head, Grendel and his mom.
Grendel and Grendel's mother. Yes, that is correct. So Beowulf thinks that he's fighting Grendel and his mother without really realizing that, oh no, you're just fighting two normal people or monster hunters. So he rips off the roof of the car, and they're freaking the hell out. And of course, bullets are not working on this guy at all. Of course, like, why would they? So they're fighting off as they're trying to not crash the car, but they're like, fuck it. Duncan flips the car and flips him off as the car just down the road flips, and it's the car's gone. It's useless now. They both live from the car crash, and they try to get away from Beowulf. And after a altercation with Beowulf, eventually Gran kills him with explosives, blows him up, blows him into a million pieces. He's dead. Beowulf is now gone, and now Gran and Duncan are just like, well, shit. Gran, it's kind of funny. Gran's like, damn, fuck me. I guess Beowulf is real, because she didn't think he was. Then we jump back to the nursing home that Gran's supposed to be at. So Duncan takes his grandmother back to the nursing home. And as they're at said nursing home, we jump back to Nimu, or Elaine, or Mary, depending on which name you're just going by at that moment. because she's filling a role for this lore on purpose to fill out this whole story and bullshit. She talks to Merlin, and Merlin's like, "We got a plan. Just keep up to the plan. Everything's Gucci." And he acknowledges that they killed the hero. They killed Beowulf. And we jump back to the what do they call it? The nursing home, as Gran's chilling with the old people, and we catch like Duncan going back home finally, sleeping. Rose is doing her own thing. As she's scrying, as Rose is scrying, everything goes to the nursing home. So she's like, "Oh shit, something's gonna happen at that nursing home." We see one of the gardeners of said nursing home get attacked by Grendel.
Uh-oh.
Now Grendel, of course, it's gonna be Grendel, right? So Grendel's this big green monster with sharp teeth, kind of Hulk-looking thing. And he's like, "Grendel's hungry," or Grendel hungers as he rips this man to shreds, rips his head off, and then eats him. And he's trying to find. Duncan's trying to get a ride to his grandmother's place, but of course his car is destroyed. But he can't seem to get a ride there, so he corners a taxi driver, and he's like, "You know what? This works for my grandmother." Points the gun at him and says, "You're gonna drive me. You're gonna drive me where I need to go." So he's on his way driving as Grendel busts into the front door of the nursing home, killing off everybody. Or not killing off everybody, but scaring the shit out of everyone. And Bridget's like, "I need to take care of this situation before it gets bad." As Duncan and the taxi driver are driving straight there, old people are hiding. Grendel's destroying the place. The taxi driver and Duncan get there, and they do fight off the with Gran taking a hot thing of oil, throws it at Grendel, burns his face, blinds him. And then when Duncan gets there, between him and everyone else, cops come up as well. They die, of course. Eventually they do kill Grendel, but the taxi driver that came with them dies in the process of Grendel's death, unfortunately. It's gruesome. It's gross. I feel bad for the taxi driver because he was trying to go home to his wife, family, but he died. It's fine. It's not fine, but it's whatever. And during all this, we jump back to Merlin as he's getting a sewing needle and starts sewing Galahad back together. All this is happening. Grendel does die by getting stabbed in the throat, and his head blows up and shit. And then we jump to Grendel's mother. Grendel's mother comes and attacks Duncan, and Duncan saves everyone. And Grendel's mother starts running off to a swamp or a marsh. And as that is all happening, Duncan's chasing after Grendel's mother, and his actual mother comes up. He's like, "Hey, I will help you. Just go out, dive into the marsh, into the swamp that Grendel's mother dived into. I will continue reading the manuscript, and you will be fine." Basically, he ends up becoming a surrogate Beowulf. So as she's reading and Duncan's fighting Grendel's mother in the swamp, he almost dies. And of course, she's reading the story. She finishes it, and Gran comes up and she's like, "What'd you read?" Because it's not in English. And she's like, basically, she is telling the rest of the story of Beowulf, how Beowulf dies in the swamp, almost dies to Grendel's mother, as a sword comes up to his hands and comes back to life and kills Grendel's mother. So that basically is what happened, is that he almost dies. The Lady of the Lake comes up, gives him Excalibur again. He's like, "Here you go." And he uses Excalibur to kill Grendel's mother.
Nice.
Which is kind of funny, because technically Beowulf does not have the sword. His sword is completely different. The sword's name starts with an H. Hrothgar, I think is the name. It's either that. No, Hrothgar is the king. Anyway, his sword's name is completely different. It's a different name. But in this place, since Duncan's being a fake Beowulf, a surrogate Beowulf, his sword is Excalibur, so he uses that to kill Grendel's mother. And after he finally kills her, he everything kind of just comes to an end, pretty much. Like they try to convince Elaine to come back, but she's like, "No, I'm filling a role. I got a job to do." So she leaves them, and Rose and Duncan relationship blossoms. They have a kiss on panel, and then we jump over to Elaine and Merlin as they talk more about their plan and how Grendel is slowly getting better. But of course, he lost both his legs and shit, so it's going to take a hot minute. But she's like, Merlin's like, he'll live, that's fine. And after that, we jump over to Otherworld, where we see King Arthur and Merlin. And Merlin's like, the plan's in motion. To find the grail, we need Percival, Galahad, and Boros. Now, Boros, since we're already there, where is he? I did not actually do that. Let me look that up for it quick, so I can kind of give you a description on what Boros is. Boros is the name of two knights in Arthurian lore, an elder and a younger. The two appear in the 13th century Lancelot Grail romance story. You got Boros the Elder and Boros the Younger. These are two knights. We jump to the British government. Now, the British government knows about all this going on, and that's how they get around the police, because they tell the police this is business dealing with the British government, so they kind of just leave them alone. That's how they've been getting around doing all this shit. So the parliament knows about all this. The prime minister knows because it's in their constitution about all this shit. So they've been cleaning up the mess after them. And we come to the prime minister talking about all this shit as he appears to, he has a box in his hand, and he opens the box. He's like, let's see what's in this box or some shit. He opens it, and Merlin comes up. And Merlin's like, not Boros, but close enough. And he takes the prime minister.
Uh-oh.
And that is the end of Volume 2 of the Once and Future story. So they have their Galahad, they have their Percival, and now they need their Boros, which is I guess is going to be the Prime Minister. I don't know if they're going to do Boros the Elder or Boros the Younger or both of them, because Boros the Younger is the son of Boros the Elder's brother. Yeah. So I don't know if they're going to need both, or they're going to need one of them. But either way, they got Boros. So yes, that's the end of the first two volumes. I'm not going to do a rating system for the first two volumes. I will save that for next week when we do part 2, volumes 3 through 5, to finish out the story. So final thoughts, Jacob, on anything?
It sounds like a very interesting story. And I'm starting to see a trend because, like, of course, like, first volume we had the introduction of King Arthur, and he's gonna be the bad guy. He's the problem.
Yeah, he's the problem. He doesn't realize he's the problem because he's doing his job, but he's the reason for all the dark times of Britain and shit.
Yeah. So, but now I'm starting to see a trend because now they've introduced Beowulf in volume 2. So
and they killed him off,
they killed him off, and now I'm just like, what more are we going to see coming after this? Are we going to be seeing other, like, heroic figures that are actually, they're not heroes, they're the bad guys. They're the...
Possibly.
So I know you already know because you've read it, but so, but I'm gonna they're probably gonna throw out like other Arthurian-esque kind of figures.
Yeah, they could.
Yeah.
I mean, I know stuff, but
Yeah.
But Go on. Sorry.
I was gonna say, I'd say I'll give it a read, but my reading list is so long right now that it's gonna be ages before we even get to that. Like, right now, I am still reading. I'm almost done with book 4 of the Wheel of Time, and I just bought book
Yeah.
5. So, and
Oh,
I'm
you
like,
just bought book 5. You're just gonna dive into
yeah,
5. Got it.
yeah.
Get it.
I'm gonna just. Well, I'm trying to get. The Wheel of Time has 14 books.
Yeah.
And like I'm just trying to get through them all. Like I mean, I'm enjoying the story so far. Like the thing about the story is that like it starts off interesting. Like each book starts off like interesting. Okay, cool. Like kind of like puts like a little something for you, like, oh, okay, this is interesting lore. Oh, okay, like, oh, it hints at what we're gonna be dealing with throughout the rest of the book. Okay, and then like the middle half of the book kind of drags because there's just a lot of setting and world building and like okay, this is the setting of what like this group of characters are gonna be set in this other group. And then eventually they're all gonna like it's all gonna come together and it starts
Yeah.
picking up towards the end and that's what it's doing. Like right now, where I'm at, like I have 100 page, I have like less than 100 pages left
Mhm.
in the book, so it's gonna be like it's picking up. I'm like, turn page, like it's like I'm like getting so like engrossed. Like okay, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen next? Like book ends. Fuck next book.
Yeah.
So yeah, and like I was curious because I've now that since I've watched the show already, like I need to watch season 1 of The Wheel of Time again because I haven't I watched it years ago and I'm realizing oh fuck I forgot a lot of what they did in the first season and I gotta watch it again because we're gonna review book 1 and 2 of The Wheel of Time.
Yes. Yes, we are.
Yeah. So when we're done with your next few books,
Um,
uh, so after volume 3, 4, and 5, what other book did you want to read, or was that it?
So I've got next week will be volumes 3, 4, and 5 of Once in the Future, of course. The week after
Mm-hmm.
that, I want to do American Gods finally. And then after that, we'll do something for both of us, Godzilla.
Okay.
And then after
And I
Gods
find
and then after Godzilla, we can do we'll go back and we'll start doing we'll back and forth from that point.
we can
So
go ahead and just go ahead and do book 1 and 2 of The Wheel of Time.
after Godzilla, yeah.
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 We can just go ahead and we'll do book 1 first, and then the next week we'll do book 2.
Yeah. And then from there we'll just go like back and forth if we have books or if I could do a few more because I have a couple I have a some books that I haven't gone over yet too. So yeah. And now we got video stuff and I got
Yeah.
when you see this, applaud future Devin because he probably sat there at his screen like, what the fuck am I gonna do with this? How am I gonna make it look pretty? What editing buffoonery am I going to unfold? So
I'm sure you're gonna come up with something good,
I know I will.
but
I
yeah.
had
So
hair.
yeah. So definitely this is definitely an interesting story, and I can't wait to see. So is it just 5 volumes?
5 volumes for the whole complete story. 5 volumes, 30
All right.
issues.
Yeah. All right, because I was thinking like, man, volume 2. It seemed like you got through volume 2 really quick.
Volume 2 is a lot more
But
action than the volume 1 because volume 1's all, of course, the groundwork of place and what's happening in the story. Volume 2 is a lot
mhm.
more just action stuff, so I kind of just like zip through that. So
All right. Well, I can't wait until we hear the conclusion next week. See how
mhm.
everything turns out. And
Yes.
yeah, we're not going to do the rating system this week because we're not technically done with
Oh,
the whole story yet. So we'll go
nope.
ahead and hold off on that.
Yep.
And well, as far as that goes, this definitely was a interesting story. Can't wait until hear the rest of it. And yeah, thanks guys for joining us for our first like video episode. This is the first time we've done this.
Yeah.
and when we started recording, I saw the background, my background here, like, and I'm like, oh, my room's a mess. Well, you're only seeing a small part
It's
of it,
not a
but
mess.
well,
It's
it's
not
like
a mess. It's fine.
compared to yours, it's very sparse. Like you have all the cool stuff in the background, and I'm just like, you can see some boxes right here, my PlayStation right here, and maybe like those little Godzilla figures right there, and my dog's bag of food.
Well, you're also in your bedroom. I'm not in my bedroom. I'm in my foyer, where all the nerd shit's at.
Mm-hmm. I
But
need
yes,
more nerd.
if you're listening to the audio version, please go YouTube. Check out the video version of it, because from this point on, we plan on keeping up with the video portion of it. So we're just doing the video and audio versions of the podcast.
Yeah, and check us out on TikTok as well.
Yes. So thank you guys for listening to today's
Oh,
episode. Go on. Sorry.
and yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Thank you for listening / watching this episode. Tune in next week. We will be reviewing volumes 3, 4, and 5.
Yes.
And
So until
until next,
then,
bye.
bye.